Hello, everyone, my dear viewers, and thank you for coming to my channel. And before you start the video, please subscribe to the channel and like this video. I will be very pleased, so let's go. The Civil War reached its climax when the North conducted several inhuman experiments to transform the men incarnated and change the course of the battle. These experiments gave Henrietta the power of a divine mythical beast, allowing him to turn into a werewolf and end the war. But the country decides that once the war is over, they can't control who has the power of God. They decide that Hank's life will no longer have value for them, and they use a bullet to kill the incarnated. The war began when the two countries discovered a precious mineral called summi. The Northerners were a loser until they started using dubious to create incarnations. Incarnated is a product born from research on a man named Eli, and soon they were used on the battlefield, dominating in the South with their monstrous powers and abilities. The North began to win every skirmish, but something unexpected happened. One of their comrades, Abby Hydra, begins to kill his own. Hank, who became captain of the Incarnated, is trying to stop the Snake Man. Abby regains consciousness for a few seconds and begs Hank to stop him. Before the hero can do anything, human soldiers begin using their cannons to detonate the monster. After the incident, Lane tells Hank and Kane that Abby talked to her about his deteriorating condition. But there was nothing the Lane could do because she didn't know how to stop it. She explains that the Abby's incarnation powers began to take him over, turning him into a real beast. Hank then gives a speech in which he tells everyone they're not real animals, they're still human. He reveals that what happened to Abby can happen to them. And before they completely lose their minds, they must, as incarnates, repress it with their personalities. A couple of weeks later, the North began marching towards the Southern capital, which also cost the party some of the insane, forcing their comrades to eliminate them. After a long and difficult series of battles, tomorrow at dawn they will march to the capital. Hank notices that his friends are losing their spirits and announces that he is going to ask or go on a date, as almost everyone in the squad encourages him to be with her. Which is surprising for the squad, because Hank wants them to celebrate with him once the war is over. Later that night, Hank visits Aline, and she asks him to talk outside. She reveals that the war is over and that the North and South are already preparing for a peace treaty, except that it does not include the incarnated. Although they are considered gods on the battlefield, many people still fear them. And once the war is officially over, the incarnated are going to be disposed of. Elaine shoots Hank with a blasphemous bullet and tells him that everyone incarnated will eventually lose their humanity. Once that happens, the embodied will be the greatest threat humanity will ever face, greater than the war itself. Aline worked very hard to find a way to prevent the incarnate mindless beasts, but her only solution was to kill her fluffy companions before they could become a threat to humanity. She also adds that Hank is too kind and gentle and will try to stop her, so she must first kill him before she goes after the remaining incarnations. Her childhood friend Kane. The two of them plan to kill the squad tonight, but then something happens. Kane adds and shoots the Lane. When Hank's vision fades, he sees Kane laughing before finally losing consciousness. 2 months later, Hank wakes up in a military hospital. A second Lieutenant Lizaran Castle tells him the war is over. The incarnated squad has broken up, and most of them have gone mad. Akin sends them to go wherever they want. She also tells Hank that Kane and Elaine have been missing since that night. After being betrayed by a childhood friend, Hank goes on a mad quest to kill the remaining incarnates and find out where Kane is. And so the hero goes hunting, starting with his friend Eddie. Madman tells him that he is a war hero thanks to the power of the incarnate. But Hank replies that there is no place for incarnations in this world, especially if they go mad and kill people. Hank grows his spear and detonates a bomb attached to him, killing Eddie. A few days later, Hank visits William Bancroft's town to kill him. William returns to his city in the shape of a dragon. Although he was relatively peaceful compared to Eddie Abby, Hank had to kill him to avoid becoming a threat to people. While relaxing in the bar, the girl suddenly bursts into the room and shoots the Hank with a rifle. But regular bullets can't kill the incarnate easily, so Hank goes after her and takes her. He interrogates the girl, and it turns out that she is the daughter of John William Bancroft Shaal. However, Hank has no time to deal with her. He has another goal: Danny, another incarnation in the city. He tells the Shaal to stay put and goes to confront Danny. Hank confronts the guy and tells him of his crimes, which consist of looting. Hank asks Danny if he remembers their vows, but the Shaal interrupts them and gets between them, trying to prevent the Hanky from killing Danny. He turns into a rhinoceros-like beast and starts attacking Hank, but the hero is already on his shoulders. Hank stabs Danny in the chest with his bomb spear. As soon as he clears the creatures, the bomb explodes, and with Danny's defeat, Hank strikes the final blow. But before he can, the guy tells him he did it because their town is so poor they couldn't even have a coffee. After hearing his last words, Hank shoots him, finally putting an end to the horrors experienced by traders and road travel. Before leaving, the Shaal asks the Hank if he intends to kill more of his comrades. Hank replies that they took an oath. As soon as someone turns into an animal, they must die. Shaal tries to stop him, but Hank has made up his mind. Then she decides to accompany him in search. A couple of days later, the Hanka Shaal is in a city that is currently being terrorized by the incarnation of the Minotaur. The incarnate creates a fortress made by dismantling the houses of the inhabitants, and also tells everyone that the enemy will soon come. Lisa informs them that the boy must be stopped, as every citizen will become homeless if he continues to build his fortress. Hank tells Lisa that he will leave at nightfall, and as night falls, the Shaal escorts him to the entrance of the fortress. However, while exploring the fortress, the Shaal falls into a trap that almost cuts it in half. But the Hank saves it just in time. She then asks the heroes on the brand, and Hank tells her about the backstory of Theo. The character tells the tale that Theo suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, and that he is not surprised by the strength he has built. Once they reach the entrance, Hank leaves the Shaal. He is finally reunited with Theo, and the incarnate greets him with his usual anxiety about imaginary enemies. Once Hank has clarified his intentions, Theo turns into a minotaur, activating his traps. The hero is trapped by a barrage of shells, and as the boy is about to finish him off, Hank turns into a werewolf. Minotaur traps are nothing compared to heightened senses and the mad dexterity of a Hank. Once a Theo trap throws a Hank into the air, he uses altitude to inflict a quick, devastating claw attack. The hero strikes a final blow, killing his comrade. A couple of days later, a Shaal rides a train to another city. But before they can proceed, Lisa stops the train and informs the Hanka of another incarnation named Hippo, which is on the way to collide with the newly built iron bridge connecting north and south. Once he learns the details, Hank tells everyone about his plan and waits for the Hippo to arrive. As soon as the monster arrives, they start shooting, which will be his failure. The next morning, the Shaal tries to convince Hank not to kill the Hippo, but later that night, explosions occur that enrage the monster. Hank turns back into a werewolf to stop the raging incarnation. After a series of attacks, they manage to injure the monster and trap it. However, he was still moving, walking as fast as he could, and then the area collapsed from the edge of the cliff, opening up a view of the ocean. Apparently, Artie was just a man of few words, but he wanted to see the ocean. As soon as the monster sees the ocean with his own eyes, he falls. A few days later, the group arrives in another city that terrorizes another incarnation. The next day, they see the victims of the attack, and one of the children admits to seeing what happened last night. Lisa tries to interrogate the child, but he runs away. Shaal tries to talk to him, but eventually becomes a target incarnated by the gargoyle. Hank arrives just in time to save her. The hero makes the gargoyle run. Later that night, Hank confronts the monster again to kill her, but she shoots him with a special bullet. Hank returns to his human form. The hero forcibly removes the bullet and rushes to the gargoyle, piercing her chest and killing her. However, Kane arrives and steals the Shaal. He says that Hank must accept their invitation or the Shaal will suffer. the man attends a party whose participants are all nobles and royals from across the country sympathetic to the Kane cause. But they turn into a bloody soup because a bunch of incarnates are staging a genocide. Hank tries to fight them off, but he is simply outnumbered. Fortunately, a group of soldiers arrive and begin to shoot the incarnated. One of the soldiers fires a cannon, punching a hole in Kane's chest. Hank sees this and stabs the spear in his face, then detonates the bomb. But Kane's powers completely heal him. He then shoots the shawl, causing Hank to remember the loss of Eileen, his favorite. These memories make him turn into a giant white wolf ravaging the city. Then he goes missing after literally turning the environment into a mess. A few weeks later, Hanka discovers that she is wandering aimlessly through the frozen mountains. After a little, Hank attacks in another incarnation, a werewolf like him. The werewolf asks him why he turned down Kane's offer and continues to pressure him into his true form. However, Hank is too weak to do anything. He tries to run, but the incarnate senses him from afar. A werewolf attacks him and attacks the tree behind which he hides. But Hanka evades attack and manages to shoot the werewolf, who still resists and attacks him, injuring the hero's left shoulder. After a pathetic demonstration of Hank's power, the werewolf tells him that he will shape him, transform, and leave the stage. That night, the werewolf again finds the Hank in the same spot and challenges him. But this time, Hank turns into his werewolf and tries to deal with the beast. Two monsters fight, and when Hank mindlessly attacks a werewolf, he recalls his transformation into a giant white wolf and returns to his human form. The monster finds the Hank pathetic and decides to throw it off the nearest rock. He then continues to tread on the Hank's chest, but the same soldiers rescue him. But the hero falls when the cliff begins to collapse. Hank wakes up on his knees with a shawl, and she tells him that she has returned to her hometown. She reveals that her father, who was shot by Hank, was resurrected, so she killed him. The girl then tells the man that somehow she understands why Hank kills the incarnated. He talks about his troubles, and she comforts him. Hank leaves and intends to finally kill his werewolf friend. But the wolf stuns the Hank. The shawl arrives and shoots the annoying beast, giving the Hank the opportunity to turn into his werewolf. And the Furies fight again. With Hank's last punch, another incarnation is retired. A few weeks before the final battle, the two remaining incarnates and their supporters founded a new country where the incarnated are gods. With a new threat, the North has set a new goal: to drop Kane off and put an end to his madness. Hank joins a group of soldiers specializing in exterminating the incarnated. With little help from the Shaal and the Lisa, the battalion marches to the fortress and is greeted by the arrows of the incarnated centaur Miles. Hank turns into his werewolf to trap the Miles, luring him into a trap. But the centaur rises and heals his bullet wounds, quickly fleeing the scene. Although the Northmen managed to reach the fortress, Miles ambushed them from behind and started firing his arrows, killing the soldiers. The centaur tries to lure the soldiers away from the main army, but it is heading for a trap. The soldiers step on the Miles, and a Hank jumps on him, which pierces the monster's chest and fires a flare, signaling the commander to bomb his location. Although the centaur succeeds in growing its limbs, the Opax is suddenly covered with pink mist. It was Yatabi. Hank kills a comrade, but before they can do anything, Kane reveals himself and blows the heads off each soldier. Hank senses this and throws his spear, which cuts off his right arm. Then he shoots, but Kane turns into a fog. Then he reappears. Kane reveals to him that he has built a new empire for everyone, for people and animals. A utopia where everyone can live in harmony. Seeing that his friend has already lost his mind, Hank turns into his werewolf and starts attacking Kane. The man creates several clones and uses them to attack and injure the hero. The sun rises and Hank turns into a man, but the shawl appears to remind him that he is still a man, not a monster, and he still has to keep his vows. After seeing the shawl, Kane remembers Elaine, who loved Hank, not him. He releases his final form and begins to pursue the shawl, but Hank blocks his attack by pushing back with a scream. Seeing the enemy fly over the fortress, Kane escapes. Hank, the Shaal goes on adventures to find the incarnated and kill them before they do anything. My story is over, and if you liked my video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like this video.